All right, good morning. So today I'm going to install some Rockwool mineral wool insulation on the floor of this studio building. So this is it was a gardening shed that came with my property, and I have done the inside. I'll show you what the inside looks like. It's a little music studio coming together. You know, we did a full reno here of beautiful new acacia wood floor, nice lime wash paint. So the inside is nice. The walls are insulated. It's got electricity. It's gonna be a cool little vibey studio, but the floor is not insulated, and you really notice it because the floor is just cold to step on. And the reason why is because there's no insulation in the floor. So I'll show you this. You can see it's just this OSB strand board, and then on top of that is the flooring. So there's no insulation, and it's got 3 walls insulated, and the floor, just all the heat sinks out of the floor. So enter this stuff. This is Rockwool Comfort Bat. This is made to go in 2x4 studs and joists that are 16 inches on center. So I got 4 bags of this. I got some tools as well. I have some strapping that I'll show you in a second here. And so I think this is going to be a pretty easy install. You don't need a vapor barrier. Apparently this stuff is moisture resistant. It doesn't soak up water, and pests don't like it. So it can just be kind of hanging out in those cavities under there. I did get some plastic strapping that I'm going to use to just double, secure it in place so it doesn't go anywhere. And I've got some knives. I bought a knife at Lowe's to cut it. I also have just a kitchen knife, and a tape measure. And I got my drill. I don't think it's going to be that complex, but let's see how we go. Here we go. Okay, so first impression, I've never worked with this stuff. I've worked with fiberglass insulation, I've worked with rigid foam insulation, I've worked with spray can insulation. It expands a lot. It's pretty cool stuff. I'm outside, so I'm not wearing a respirator or anything. They do recommend, I think, gloves, so I'll probably get some gloves on, but this is it. It seems pretty self-explanatory. I do see it kind of filling up with air, and these are the bats, say R15 on them. These are the bats that are just going to slide into those cavities in between my, I guess you could call them joists, even though they're just 2x4s on this building. So here we go. Okay, so I'm under here. So here's what I noticed. First of all, it went in really easy. This is my first bat. I was pretty delighted with how easy that goes in, and it's a little bit oversized for the cavity as long as the studs or your joists are spaced appropriately, so it squeezes in. If you can see here, there is a little bit of an air gap, and so I'm a little bit concerned about that. And just when I put this in, with gravity and expansion and contraction over the seasons here in Tennessee, I would be concerned that this might start to sag and there'd be that air gap, and then that's going to reduce the insulation performance. You can see it down there at the end. So I'm gonna put the strapping on, and then, my first inclination was maybe I'm gonna do another layer of rigid board. Rockwool makes a product that is an actual board that I'll look at how much it's gonna cost, but I might do another layer, and then I just know it's gonna hold the insulation right up against the subfloor, which is gonna give better performance, much better performance than if there's that air gap. So, but yeah, it's pretty easy to go in. So I'm just going to toss as much of this in as I can now, and I'll report on how it goes. Okay, so first lesson learned, they're going in really easy. I'm really happy with how easy they're going in. but they do have little fibers that fall off them, and they're falling into my eyes. So I'm gonna get some eye protection, and definitely if you're putting this above you, you're gonna need eye protection. All right, so far so good. It's going in pretty easy. You know, I didn't go for spray foam because I started reading a Reddit. I started doing some digging, and people on the internet are pretty up in arms about things that can go wrong with spray foam in terms of the off-gassing, and I just didn't want to risk it. You know, the benefit of spray foam is it would be a continuous surface with no air infiltration underneath. And even though it's outside, I just didn't want to take like the 1/10 of a 1% chance that maybe I was going to get noxious fumes in my space. So I think the spray foam is probably better insulation wise, cost about the same if not less, messier to install, but anyways, I chose the Rockwool. It's good for the environment. I'm not going to get any off-gassing. So I've got to do my first cut here, so I'm going to see how that goes. Let's see how this stuff cuts. I have like a regular just bread knife to see how it cuts. There we go. It cuts really easily, which is nice. Really easy. Yeah, that's real easy. That's not going to be hard. I'm going to cut a bunch of those. All right, the cutting's easy. So the other little wrinkle is we've got these support beams that run the length of the building. And then there's the gap in here. You can see the insulation on the other side there. These runners, I guess you could call them, these beams. And so the trick here is to get the insulation. There's only like 2 inches between the runners. So I got 2 options. I can either try and cut some grooves in it and then squeeze it back through there, or I can just try and go for it without cutting the grooves. And that's what I'm going to try first and see how that sits in there. All right, that took about 5 seconds, so that is not going to work. I'm going to have to cut down the edge. I'm going to have to cut off this bottom bit rather, like the bottom inch, so that it fits through this opening, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to squeeze it, get it back there. Just because of the consistency of this stuff, it's not like fiberglass, it's more rigid than fiberglass. It's kind of weird, but that's what I'm gonna have to do. So here's my bat, and I'm just with this knife just cutting out this little groove on the bottom side for that runner. It is pretty easy to work with. Should probably get a tarp because it's a little bit wet out here today. I might go do that in a minute. Let's see if I can get this come off cleanly. There's my groove. You know, it's not pretty, but I think it's gonna work. So I'll try this as my test piece. If that goes in nice, and I'll just cut them all like this. All right, so I got the first piece in there. So this is the piece with the notch. I was able to stuff that into this cavity. And then one thing I like about building stuff is continuous process improvement. So I realized I had to cut the bat off on this end. So now I'm wondering, can I make the bat shorter and just use this, like fill up that gap without cutting a notch on the other end, and then, you know, do the same thing here. I'm gonna lose a little bit of insulation effectiveness because there's that inch there, but I'm experimenting to figure out what the best method is here. All right, now I got my third piece to complete this continuous insulation job. I'm gonna try and I notch this, and I'm gonna see if I can fit it into this last little cavity here. Yep, and the answer is yes, I can. So that goes in nicely just to complete this side, and I'll have to do the same thing over on that side where I've got those same two runners, 1, 2. And it seems like I have a method that's gonna work now, so I'm just gonna go at it. Basically cutting these pieces 27 inches, and then these will be, it was 36 minus 27, so these will be 9 inches. And then a bunch of 9-inch pieces, and a bunch of 27-inch pieces, and then the 27s will just be boom, 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 boom. The 9s will be boom, 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 boom on both sides, and then I should be good to go. Okay, so it's going pretty well. You know, one thing that's really interesting is estimating how long renovation projects are gonna take. It's a skill that I wanna build because I realized that I was in the habit of vastly underestimating how long they were gonna take, and I was just thinking about why. And it's always the details, you know? It's like the time, when I think in my mind, how long is it gonna take to just stuff all this insulation under there? It's like, well, maybe a couple hours. But then there's the time to make these cuts, and I have to measure and figure out my process and how to install it. And so I kind of thought in my mind, this is gonna take me all day, and I think it will. And that's the skill I want to hone, is being able to accurately estimate, because it helps me better plan my time. It also helps me understand how much things should cost when I'm fixing stuff up around here. So I'm gonna get back to cutting these and stuffing them underneath. All right, so I got the 27 inches in there. Now I'm gonna cut the 10 inches and notch them also, and then I'll be done the first side. All right, that went super fast. And if you know me, you might know that I love continuous process improvement. And that was just an example. It's like the first few were difficult, but then just organically, I figured out a fast way to do it, and boom, 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 5 minutes, and all these got cut. And I mean, that's the reason not to do things yourself that have a long process of getting to that optimal efficiency. Like drywall, like I don't finish my own drywall anymore because it takes a couple years, I think, to get good. And when you're good, you can go at like literally 20 times faster than somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. So lesson learned on that one, but this is going really, really well. right, so doing well. Got most of this side done now. There's a little detail, there's this gap, and I'm gonna fill that. I decided instead of trying to notch them on the side, because there's a lot of weird geometry in here, I think I'm just gonna take these little strips that I cut off and fill that gap up there, and then I can just put a block in between that 2x4 and this 2x4. So I'm gonna do that now. Well, so as you can see, this gap here all the way along is now filled with insulation, and now I can put a block in here to create a continuous insulative barrier. And you know, it's important because just like a bucket that has a hole in it is not going to hold water, a building envelope that's got a heat sink or an uninsulated section is just going to be leaking heat continuously. So if you took thermodynamics, or if you're just learning about thermodynamics, if you have a continuous barrier where there can be no conductive or convective heat loss, it's just going to be way more comfortable inside. So that's what I'm going for here. Now time to fill up this cavity. All right, well, I'm making good progress. I'm probably 2/3 done underneath there. Now I've got to cut 11 14-inch pieces with a notch and do this cavity here. And rather it's gonna be this one. You can see the insulation. And then I've got 2 more rows, smaller and then even smaller, and then I'm done. So here we go. All right, so I got that next row in. I noticed something pretty cool here. I'm gonna show you. So these are the cavities that I still have to fill here. Is these cavities here. But you can see where I notched the piece that came through, and I noticed that I could actually fluff the corners here because it didn't come through nicely, but it's nice to visually confirm that that space between the runner that's holding up the structural runner and the subfloor is now full of plumped up insulation. So feeling good about that. Now I'm gonna do this next cavity. Actually, I decided I'm gonna do the outside one on this corner, or this edge first, because then I can again visualize that those spaces between the runners and the subfloor are filled, and then I can just block up the second or the last cavity. So I need 11 9.5 inchers. Here we go. Cool, I'm done cutting. So one little hack is I've been using the bag here as a little ski. It's slippery, so it's easy to drag under there and get access to all my pieces. So I'm gonna insulate this cavity now. All right, that was very easy. So now the last bay, I'm able to check to make sure that those spaces underneath the runners have insulation in them. And I'm gonna cut the pieces and get them in. All right, well, I'm done, at least with the insulation part. It's 20 after 1, I started around 10. So it took me a little over 3 hours to cut all this and get it all installed. Show you what it looks like. You know, it looks cozy. I do realize that there's thermal bridging from all these 2x4s that run across, so that's something. It's just another reason to maybe put some board on there. And yeah, just to refresh, because I think a lot of people don't understand this. There's 3 modes of heat loss, heat transfer, conduction, convection, and radiation. And so by blocking up all the air cavities and putting the insulation between the cold surface and the outside, that's stopping the conduction of heat that's moving through the subfloor. It's also stopping the convection of cold air that's running against the subfloor, and it's stopping radiation because each material has a resistance to letting radiation through, which I think is a function of density. I need to look that up and understand that better. But because there are those 2x4s running the length of the building that are exposed, there's going to be conduction through the 2x4s, and they're connected directly to the subfloor or directly to the interior space. So I think this is going to be really cozy, and I'm going to go have some lunch, put on some strapping, and maybe in the future I'll install some insulative board across over the 2x4s, which will give the whole assembly even more of an R value. It also feels a little weird just to have this stuff exposed, because, you know, if there was a crazy rainstorm, it could potentially get wet. Or if somebody was spraying, you know, it was like washing the building, it could get wet. And but I just have to remember not to spray it, and it is supposed to be resistant to water. The other thing I didn't mention is, from a sound perspective, it's quite dense. This stuff is heavy, so I think it's going to be good for this music studio because it will absorb some of the ambient noise that maybe is coming from the outside trying to get in while we're recording and whatnot. So, all right, I'm gonna get some lunch, and then I think strapping is next, and then I should be done. Oh, another thing, it seems like I got away with 3 bags. I bought 4 because I did the math. It was 12 feet by 16, but I did not take into account all the 2x4s. So if I had subtracted the 2x4s, I would have realized I could get away with 3 bags. And so now I have an extra bag of Rockwool, which I'll probably use potentially in the barn or the house, somewhere where I need some more insulation. One other thing before I go to lunch, I just flipped on this heater here. I had it at 60. I'm gonna heat it back up to 72 and see how it holds the temperature. You know, it already feels quieter in here, I gotta say. There's guys doing drywall in the house and I can't hear them, so that's a good sign. Haven't put up any of my foam, like the sound deadening acoustical foam in here yet. Just still getting the building exterior done, and then we'll vibe out the interior and make it nice. All right, finished lunch, feel refreshed. So now the strapping. Now, it's not probably technically super necessary, but I think it will, to the degree that it can reduce the air gap between the insulation and the subfloor, I think it will make it more comfortable inside, and it'll give me peace of mind that the Rockwool is not going to, detach, fall down, and get gross. So I'm gonna do the strapping. I think I can do it quickly. I bought these decking screws, 8 by 1.25 inches. They're Phillips head, which I hate, but they're just going into the 2x4, so it should be easy. Got my drill. Over lunch, I was reading about Rockwool and the material itself. I actually really like it. It's made from recycled rock fibers mostly. It's non-toxic, and it's actually recyclable, which is cool. There's not many building products that are actually recyclable. So I guess at the end of this building's life, this Rockwool could be taken and maybe ground up and made into more Rockwool. So I think I would use this again, and I'm considering using it on the barn up there. Again, the spray-in insulation is very bad for the environment, and I don't think it's great acoustically. This has some mass, it's more massive than fiberglass. And it doesn't off-gas, and it's good for the environment, and it's recyclable, so it's hard to argue with that, and it's relatively affordable. So yeah, I'm digging it. Okay, I got some scissors, I got my strapping. I'm gonna see how this works. Okay, so I got this strapping going on. It's not really doing much, but it's simple and easy to get in, so give it a go. Continuous process improvement. If I skip a few bays with the strapping, it's faster, and then I just screw them in, and I think it's going to be good. It is touching the insulation, so it should provide just a guard against gravity or anything that might happen in the building, shifting, changes in temperature that cause it to expand or contract. So, and it's quick. I think it'll take me less than an hour to get it all up here, so I'm going to continue with it. All right. Well, that was pretty easy. I've got to clean up now. I'm gonna check what it's like inside just to see. Heat's been on a little bit. Yeah, it feels nice and toasty. I swear, the sound is deader now. That's really cool. Tap! Yeah, it's definitely deader. It was quite reverberous when I first got the drywall in here. And yeah, it's really, that's the thing I noticed. It feels more like a sound treated environment. Just even putting that Rockwool underneath this wood floor. Check 1, 2. Well, that's a bonus. Very stoked about that. All right, I'm gonna clean up and call it a day. All right, I cleaned up. Cleaning up always takes longer than you think. There's always another level of clean, but it's really nice to bring things back to pristine condition is what I've learned. So starting a project and finishing a project maintains the pristine condition. So now building doesn't look any different, but it does feel different on the inside, and I think it's going to make a big difference when it gets cold again. Even though it's December here in Tennessee right now, today was like almost a t-shirt day, but it will get cold again, and I'm excited to be in there and have it feel like a very well insulated, sound insulated, heat insulated space for creativity. So thanks for watching. See you next time.